Hi, everybody, and welcome to phase two of the nutrition course. In phase one, we discussed understanding food groups and intuitive eating. And how we now build off of that is now that we know where proper nutrients come from, we now know how to be able to fill calories with the proper foods or with the foods that are going to supply the most nutrients to us. When starting to count calories, we always want to view it as I now am understanding how to fuel my body for its needs. I am now understanding how to fuel my body properly for what it's going to do. So, counting calories is a way for you to add parameters to intuitive eating. And it's also a way for you to know that you are supplying your body with the fuel that it needs in order to function. Now, in this phase two, it's thinking about it as what did you just do and what are you about to do? Whether that's waking up in the morning and preparing for your workday, whether that's giving yourself enough energy to make it through the remainder of work, whether that's supplying your body for a workout or supplying your body after a workout or fueling your body before bed. We're giving yourself enough nutrients for overall functioning. Now, we still want to keep into consideration what you were eating before, and then just adding in the portion sizes to it. So when you start tracking your food or when you start logging and counting calories, you'll notice that you're going to just use the serving sizes for that nutrient. So, for example, before you might have just said, okay, I'm going to have a chicken, a pasta, and then a veggie. But when we start to count calories, we're now going to say, okay, I'm going to do 3/4 of a cup of pasta. I'm going to do 4 ounces or 3/4 of a cup of chicken. And now I'm going to do 1 cup of veggies. So we're still taking those same exact items. We're just adding in the portion sizes to it so that we can log it and see what we're eating is providing us enough fuel for what we need. And that's why we remind about the serving size of grains being 3/4 to 1 cup, having fruit be either one piece or to be 1 cup, and veggies being 1 cup or one piece. I've also included how the serving sizes for dairy tends to differ. So for cheese, you're looking at about 1/4 of a cup. For milk, it's going to be 8 ounces. And then when it comes to yogurt, it's traditionally going to be 3/4 of a cup. Same thing when it comes to cottage cheese, it's usually about a half a cup, 3/4 of a cup, depending on what you end up using. And then for protein, you can measure it out as 3/4 of a cup, or you can do it as 4 ounces, which you can weigh out. And then in terms of fats, it depends based off of the source. And so I've listed that below for the different nut butters, nuts itself, seeds, and oils. Now, these are a couple of different apps that are very popular that make tracking a little bit easier. I always recommend MyFitnessPal because it has so many different options for you. And if you type in anything, chances are it's going to come up. And it has a lot of ways to be able to weigh an item, whether that be in grams, in ounces, in cups, in packages. So MyFitnessPal is great. And then also the premium option allows you to be able to scan different items and even get a little bit deeper into your knowledge behind what you're eating and when you're eating it. And that's the most unanimous one that I recommend using. Other popular ones are Lose It and Avatar. You can also end up logging your food on Trainerize so that your coach can see it. And Trainerize also has an option where they can do meal plans to give you additional meal ideas based off of what calories are recommended for you. Some other ones are MyNet Diary and Chronometer that have also been known to have quite a few options on there. So these are just a couple of apps that you can utilize to start to count your calories and keep track of your food. Now, in the first step here is that you would select what you wanted to log your food on. And you don't start with a recommended calorie amount. Your calories are very specific to you and based off of what you're currently eating. So when you first start to log your food, just log what you're currently doing. I always tell people, when you're first logging, there is no wrong answer to what you eat. And even when you are logging, we know there's still not really a wrong answer to what you eat. It's simply trying to figure out what your tendencies and your trends are so that we can find a greater balance and then start to work your food up or down, whether you've been in a deficit for a long time, or maybe you've been in maybe you've been in a deficit or a surplus for a really long time, and getting an idea of what you're eating is going to allow us to figure out, do we need to get your calories up or do we need to work your calories down? It's also going to be able to allow us to find balance amongst your macros once we get into that phase. So I'll log your food for 3 to 5 days to get an idea of what you would traditionally eat. That brings us to step 2. In step 2, once we have an idea of what you are currently eating and finding an average over the course of 3 to 5 days, so you'd add up all those calories and then divide it by 3 or divide it by 5, you're going to find the average, and that is the amount of calories that you want to start with. And then from there, we may work your food up, or you might want to work your food down. If you've been severely under eating, we don't want to automatically bring your calories up 700, 800 calories. Your body and your metabolism are not ready for that. So if you've, let's say, been traditionally eating 1,000 calories a day, we would want to maybe bring you up to 1,250. And then we'd bring you up to 1,500. And then we'd bring you up to 1,700. And you would slowly increase your calories based off of how your body responds to it. And we can use biofeedback for that. We can use your basal metabolic rate for that from an in-body scan. We can use your skeletal muscle mass for that as well. And you can also track your weight week to week. And if your body is responding well, meaning you're not going super high up in your weight isn't spiking, you're not experiencing digestive issues, then it's okay to continue to work your food up. So it is a weekly to weekly basis when increasing your food. And it's the same thing when we go into slowly reducing your food. You would never automatically go from, let's say, 2,500 calories a day and then drop to 1,500 calories. We would never do that. You'd be starving. The brain fog, the crashing, the mood swings, we wouldn't want to do that to you. So we would slowly start to work your food down if you find that you were in a surplus for a long time. Now, the other one too is that when we start to get an idea of your tracking, we can see not only what you're consuming, but when you're consuming it and how much you're consuming in one sitting. And so let's say that we do want to work your food up to 2,000 calories a day. Well, we're going to split up those calories over the course of 4 to maybe 5 meals to make it that every single meal is between 400 to 500 calories. And that's going to help you to feel fuller throughout the rest of the day. It's going to help your brain cognition. It's going to help your digestion. It's going to help your blood sugar levels. So that's how, after logging, we either work your food up, we work your food down, and then we create balance amongst the meals so that you're eating every 3 to 4 hours and keeping those meal sizes very similar to be able to help out with your overall body functioning, both amongst the organs and amongst your brain and all of that functions. So moving on, we have step 3. And step 3 is, again, that same concept of we want to add that portion size. So we're still thinking, okay, if I'm trying to work my food up, I'm now consuming 2,000 calories, then I'm going to have 4 different meals that are each going to be 500 calories, but I'm still going to have a protein with each one. I'm going to have a fruit and a vegetable with each one. I'm going to have a grain, and then I'm going to have fats and dairy. So you're still having all of those meals. You're still having that mindset of the order in which you prepare them, But now you're going to add in those serving sizes to make sure that you're getting enough nutrients to meet your calorie amount. Now, an example here is that let's say that before you log all of your food and you find that you're having a yogurt cup. Okay, so that's only a protein. Then you're having a salad, and that's just vegetables. And then for a snack, you're having an apple and cashews. So you have your fruit and a fat, and you have a protein shake. What we see here is we might find that this individual has been one severely under eating for a long time. So we want to increase their food. We are finding that they may be lacking a lot of micronutrients and macronutrients. So we're not experiencing as optimal body functions. We find that they're going to be missing out on a lot of foods that help out with fullness. So we might be experiencing a lot of brain fog, a lot of hunger, a lot of mood swings, maybe some issues going on with digestion and cognition. So what we would do is slowly go ahead and increase their food. With this individual, we would increase their food every single week with gradual increments based off of their weight and based off of their biofeedback. So the first move that we would do is increase to 1500 and then space out those 1500 calories amongst those different meals. We would aim for about 4 meals a day, thinking breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack, or maybe it's breakfast, lunch, pre-workout, post-workout, depending on the person. We would then go through and make sure that every single meal started off with a protein, and then we would build on top of that with the serving sizes. So the other note that I want to make here is that when you first start looking at your food, add on to what you are already doing. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, because if you were to go and just completely uproot all of your meals, you're going to find that it's a lot harder to prep and it's a lot harder to adhere to. Whereas in this example that before, if we just take these items and just add a little more oomph to them, a little more nutrients to them, a little more food groups to them, you're more likely adhere to it because you already know that you're going to enjoy it. You already know that it's easy to have into your routine. We're just adding a little bit more density to it, which is why in the breakfast, okay, you enjoyed the yogurt, then yes, let's add that granola, but then let's also add some berries to it. It's going to keep you fuller longer and it's going to have more fiber to it. Same thing for the lunch. That salad's probably not going to leave you full for a very long time. So let's add some quinoa for some greater density. And then let's also add some chicken to it for protein to be able to help out with your muscle synthesis, to help with your fullness, and to help with the digestion of that food. We would then go into the snack. You know, we know you like the apple, but let's add some peanut butter to it for a little bit more fats. And maybe you decide that, no, I really do like the cashews, but then we're going to add that protein shake in there to get that protein in before your workout. And then for dinner, we would have something that's a little bit more wholesome, a little bit more low GI, providing you nutrients to replenish your muscle glycogen in that protein synthesis. And you're going to have it before bed. So it's going to help you to sleep and when it's in a smaller portion size. Now, you have heard me mention biofeedback, and these are the 6 markers of biofeedback. Now, there is going to be another entire session where I go over each biofeedback marker and what it means for our body. But I wanted to go over it here to at least help you to understand how all of these factors can play into what your calories need to be, how they need to be adjusted. So when we look at how much food that we need, or when it's time to increase our calories, the basic note is traditionally going to be based off of your weight. But all 6 of these, sleep, hunger, recovery, energy, digestion, and stress, let us know when it's time to either work our food up or to work our food down. Now, the first one is that we look at sleep. If you find that you are very irritable and that you are not sleeping very well, or you're finding it hard to fall asleep or to stay asleep, a couple of things that we look at is that it could be time to go into a caloric deficit. It could mean that you're eating a lot of very processed foods and that it's time for us to swap out for things that are more wholesome. But it also could be the opposite. It could be that it's time for us to increase your foods because you're not getting enough nutrients for the synapses in your brain and you're finding it hard to stay asleep because you're so hungry. So we would increase your food throughout the day, and we can also think about increasing your food in the meal that you're having before bed. And we remember that eating before bed is okay. Our bodies don't just stop working. They're still functioning. So we want to be able to eat before bed, even if it is something small, low GI, to be able to help us to sleep and help our bodies to recover. We remember that sleep is anabolic. It helps us to build our muscles. Now, the other one that we can look at is we can look at the meal timing before bed too. Maybe you're eating a little bit too close to bed, and that's what's causing a disruption. Maybe we need to eat about an hour, maybe 2 hours before bed rather than right before we go to bed. Now, the next one is your hunger cues, tells us about your calories as well. If you're hungry, yes, we can look at the quality of the food that you're eating and focusing more on density of the foods. For example, when we eat something that's like a pasta, it's normally going to be very small. But if we have something that's going to be potatoes, it's going to be something that's rather large in size with the same amount of carbohydrates. So we can look at the portion size, we can look at increasing your calories, we can look at the different times of the day that you're getting hungry as well, and increase the portion sizes of those meals when you're experiencing hunger. We can focus on foods that digest slowly, things that don't have very high spikes in blood sugar. And then again, same thing, we could focus on that meal timing as well. Maybe we need to eat more frequently. Maybe it's eating every 2 to 3 hours rather than every 3 to 4 hours. But this is how our hunger cues can tell us whether it's time to work our food up and even focus on the calories at each meal as well. In terms of recovery, traditionally, when we ask about this biofeedback marker, we are asking, do we supplying ourselves with enough nutrients to recover and to let our bodies recover? If you're experiencing a lot of muscle soreness, we would look at increasing your food. We could increase carbs and we would increase protein. And we would also talk about the meals that we're having before and then after our workouts as well. And this allows us to supply our bodies for the right amount of nutrients before the workout, muscle glycogen and protein. And we would also, in fact, and we would also want to take a look at the amount of food that we're eating afterwards in order to replenish that muscle glycogen and that muscle protein for protein synthesis. And we can also take a look at the types of foods that we are having in those meals as well. So recovery gives us a good idea of if we need more food and the meal timing of our food, as well as the amount of protein that we're having throughout the day. Because your recovery can also tell us, okay, we're not getting enough. We need to add more protein and more carbs in. Now, when it comes to your energy levels, this can also pay into those hunger cues as well. If you find that you're incredibly groggy in the morning, or you're absolutely wired at night, or if you've experienced crashes in the middle of the day, food can play a factor, and your calories can play a factor into working that food up or down. If you've been in a caloric surplus for a very long time and you find that you're incredibly sluggish, it's time for a cut. It's time to put yourself in a deficit. It's time to work ourselves down. To the contrary, if you've been in a deficit for a very long time and you're constantly groggy and you're incredibly tired and you're finding yourself very sluggish, it's time to work our food back up. So that's what energy kind of tells us. And then our energy throughout the day tells us where we need more food. So a lot of times people will tell me, I'm incredibly exhausted and hungry around that 2 or 3 o'clock mark. And it normally means, okay, we either need to increase the calories and the portion sizes of your lunch. We need to maybe fix the quality of your lunch, or maybe that's where we need a snack. And so whatever we were missing in our last meal, let's add a snack in there for this meal. And let's focus on that portion size to increase our calories. We can also focus on changing the sizes of food. Maybe we need to increase the portions of your carbohydrates and increase the portions of your protein and of your fruits and vegetables. And then we can also talk about the meal timing there, making sure that we're eating every 2, 3, 4 hours and staying consistent with that as well to be able to keep your energy levels consistent throughout the day. Now, the biggest thing why we go through those three processes of knowing what you're eating, adjusting what you're eating, and slowly making those adjustments has a lot to do with digestion. Because if we were to just go in and just increase your protein or increase your calories, your digestive system may not be ready for that. And you would experience a lot of GI distress, including bowel movements and bloating. And that's why we slowly increase it so that we can help out with your body's digestive system and energy demands. Now, digestion can mean a lot of things, and we're going to do an entire slide just off of digestion and gut health. But we could adjust the amount of protein if you're finding that the calories coming from protein at a meal is causing issues. We could adjust the portion sizes of your meals. Maybe we need to make your portion sizes smaller if you're experiencing a lot of bloat or experiencing a lot of fullness and GI discomfort. We can also look at the types of foods in those meals that could have caused the digestive issues. And that's where a lot of holistic approaches come in, such as taking walks after meals, taking pre and probiotics, only if we know that's what we need. There's other things that come into consideration before we want to go that route. That's where we can talk about if there's a food that's triggering it and potentially do a low food map diet or an elimination diet where we kind of figure out what's causing the GI issues. It could also take into consideration how close you are eating to a certain activity as well. So digestion is one that can be kind of finicky, I guess, but when it comes to that digestion, that's why we slowly work the food up or slowly work the food down to help out with your digestive system. And then the last one is stress. If you are under a lot of stress, we really want to focus on potentially decreasing the metabolic stress on your body and the digestional stress from your body. So if you are somebody where you are under a lot of stress all the time, traditionally we might work your food down if you're experiencing a lot of GI distress. But on the contrary, if you are not eating enough and you're constantly stressed out, you're just going to continue to run your body into the ground. So we need to supply your body with more food to be able to help combat that stress. And it's also going to help out with your mental cognition to have more wholesome foods and to have more food in your diet. So it could mean that we increase the food and meal consistency. It can mean that we swap out foods to be more organic, to be more wholesome. It can mean low GI foods so we don't spike blood sugars, then have crashes, which is seen a lot with people who have depression and anxiety as well. We would want to have a lower GI foods to be able to help with a lot of those triggers. And while food is not going to solve our mental health, it can help with some of the effects that they have on us. So that's just how a low GI food can help out with those symptoms at times. So when it comes to stress, there's a lot of holistic approaches that come with that. But this is how working our food up or working our food down in terms of calories can start to help out with the stress and the mental health that we are experiencing. Now, a couple of things when it comes to those weekly caloric adjustments. The number one, we would increase if your activity level changes, or maybe we would decrease if your activity level changes. It depends on also what type of activity that you're doing. Next, we make adjustments based off of biofeedback. So in the example that I provided earlier, where you're only eating 1,200 calories and then we increase to 1,500, if your biofeedback is good every single week, going through all of those markers, and your weight, which is our next point, is staying very similar, we can continue to increase your food up based off of your biofeedback. But if we ever got to a point where you might be experiencing issues with biofeedback or your weight ends up spiking, we would stop it, let your metabolism adjust, let your body get used to it, and then slowly start to work your food up. Or maybe it's finding your maintenance calories. It very much depends from person to person. We can also do this based off of your basal metabolic rate and your skeletal muscle mass, which I will go over in our example here. This is an InBody scan. I did just find this picture online, and in the InBody scan, what I wanted to point out was the lean body mass and then your basal metabolic rate. Your lean body mass is traditionally where we would have a select protein marker. So we would use this number to find the amount of protein that you need in your diet based off of your lean muscle mass, because traditionally it's going to be anywhere from 1 to 1.5, sometimes 2 grams of protein per lean body mass, depending on the person and the activity level that you're doing, as well as how high or low your calories are. And then your basal metabolic rate is how many calories that you burn if you were to do absolutely nothing. So if you were to do nothing but sit on the couch all day long watching Netflix, your basal metabolic rate is how many calories that you would burn doing that. So as your basal metabolic rate goes up, we also want to give your body more food to help out with its demands. And traditionally, based off of your basal metabolic rate, this is also to give us an idea of if you're eating enough too, based off of your activity level. Because based off of your activity, you might need to be 5, 6, 7, 800 calories higher than that just for performance in your workouts, let alone trying to build muscle. So even though we don't take this as religion, because calories are still very much based from person to person, also based off of age and your current routines and what you're currently eating, these are just some markers that we can utilize to know whether it's time to increase your food or maybe potentially decrease your food. So this whole series here was discussing calories and understanding how to find your calories, log your calories in terms of portion sizes, order, and how it can be adjusted week after week based off of your biofeedback and other markers within your body. In our next segment, we're going to talk a little bit more about biofeedback and what all of these markers look like for us and how we need to adjust our foods and our calories based off of those. Thank you so much, and I look forward to continuing this session with you all.